What's going on, Not Move Nation? Welcome to the Not Move podcast. Today's February 6th at 8:31 a.m. Eastern Time. I'll be breaking down the NBA basketball games for today. We have 6 games on today. Um, Thank you to our viewers, supporters, subscribers, followers. We really do appreciate you guys. Also, thanks to our sponsors, BetUS, MyBookie.ag, Walmart.com, Open Goal, the MLB and NFL Pro Shops, and W Energy Drinks. All right. So I'll be mentioning some lines today, this morning, when I'm covering these games. The spread, over, under. I checked those lines at 3:56 a.m. or excuse me, 4:56 a.m. Eastern Time, just so you guys know. And then I'll be covering, against the spread trends. Yesterday, there were 6 teams that had against the spread advantages on the show, and those teams were 1-5 against the spread yesterday. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. And then let's go over injuries first. So I'm looking at rotowire.com, ROTOwire.com. And they're saying Tyler Harrow for the Miami Heat is out today due to a ribs issue. Zubac was just recently traded by the Clippers to Indiana, and he's out due to personal reasons and also being traded. Chris Murray for Portland out due to a back issue. He has missed the past 14 games, though. Darius Garland for the Clippers now is out due to that trade. Also, he's dealing with a toe issue. And then Matherin for the Clippers is out for being recently traded. Questionable players. Usually when players are questionable, there's about a 50-50 chance that they play. Sabonis for Sacramento is questionable with a back issue. Josh Hart for the New York Knicks is questionable with an ankle issue. He missed the last game that the Knicks played on February 4th against the Nuggets. And then Karl Anthony Towns is questionable with an eye issue. Alvarado, the new New York Knick, he's questionable since he was just traded. Bobby Portis for Milwaukee is questionable with a hip issue. Julius Randle for Minnesota, questionable with a thumb issue. Dosunmu for Minnesota, questionable due to being traded recently. And then Avia for Portland is questionable with a back issue. Anunoby for the Knicks is probable to play due to a toe issue. Usually when players are probable, there's a good chance that they'll play. First game I want to talk about is the Miami Heat and Boston Celtics. Miami is on a 1-game losing streak. The Celtics are on a 4-game winning streak. Both of these teams did not play yesterday. Boston has won 2 regular season games in a row against Miami and have won the last 8 out of 10 regular season games against them. Boston leads the season series this season 2-0 against Miami. They've beat Miami twice. One was on December 19th. That game was in Boston, like it is here today. Boston won that by a final score of 129-116. Then the most recent game that they played, it was at Miami. Boston won by 5 points, 119-114. Boston has a 7-3 money line record on Fridays, which they beat Miami on one of those games was on a Friday. And then Miami has a 4-3 money line record on Fridays. Norman Powell for the Miami Heat does have a 20-6 career record against Vucevic, the projected starting center there today for Boston. That was probably the biggest lopsided record that I saw out of all the player matchups that I looked at. There could be some ones that I overlooked, but that's the one that stuck out to me. When I checked this morning, Boston was favored on DK. It was the book I was looking at. Boston was favored by 6.5 points, with the over under being 230.5. It's still at 6.5, but now the over under is at 227.5. Once again, I checked it about, I think it was, what time was it? 4:56 a.m. Eastern time is when I checked that line. So that over under has dropped. Against the spread trends, I give Miami a 2-1 advantage against the spread with these trends. Miami, in general, Boston is better against the spread this year. They're 29-22. Miami's 29-23 against the spread. So Boston, by default, is better against the spread. Miami's 11-9 against the spread as a road underdog. Boston's 9-10 against the spread as a home favorite. So I give Miami the advantage there. And then Miami's 17-7 against the spread after a loss, which ranks third best in the NBA. But Boston's good against the spread after a win. They're 18-14, which ranks sixth best. But overall, I give Miami a 2-1 advantage there. But as I mentioned at the start of the show, when I gave teams against the spread advantages yesterday, they went 1-5 against the spread yesterday. So if that trend continues, there's a decent chance Boston, covers here. Anyways, let's talk about, points in the paint and all that stuff. Let's talk about Miami's defense first and foremost. Miami ranks 22nd in points in the paint allowed per game. And Jaylen Brown is the leader for the Celtics in points in the paint per game. He ranks ninth best in the NBA, followed up with Vucevic now, who's with the Celtics. He ranks 50th best in the NBA. Fast break points allowed per game. Miami's average at that. They rank 15th in that category. But Jaylen Brown does rank 17th best in the NBA in fast break points per game. And then 3-point shots, Miami ranks 24th in 3-point field goals allowed per game to opposing teams. So their 3-point defense isn't that great. And Boston has some guys that can capitalize on that. Derek White, Hauser, Pritchard all rank within the top 50 of the NBA in 3-point field goals made per game. Derek White ranks 19th, Hauser 27th, Pritchard 31st. Miami allows a lot of assists per game and rebounds per game. Assists per game, they rank 26th. So there's not too many teams that allow more assists per game than Miami. Derek White, Pritchard, and Jaylen Brown are the three leaders for this Celtics team in assists per game. Derek White ranks 26th best in the NBA, Pritchard 31st, Jaylen Brown 41st, and then Miami ranks 26th in rebounds allowed per game to opposing teams. So Vucevic is the leader technically now for Boston with he ranks 13th best in the NBA in rebounds per game. And then it's Kata, who ranks 20th, and Jaylen Brown, who ranks 35th best in the NBA. Now, I did notice, Boston, both of these teams are actually pretty good defensively. Even though Miami ranks poorly in all of these categories, team defensive efficiency, I don't know how that's possible, how Miami ranks so bad in these categories, yet they still rank fifth best in team defensive efficiency. Anyways, points in the paint allowed per game. Boston has done a great job at that this season at limiting points in the paint per game to opposing teams. They rank second best in the NBA. However, Vucevic now plays for Boston, right? He used to play with Chicago, and Chicago ranks 26th right now in points in the paint allowed per game. So if you think, Boston's defense is going to get worse in regards to points in the paint allowed per game, now that Vucevic is there, Points in the paint leaders for Miami include Jaquez and Tyler Harrow. Jaquez ranks 26th best in the NBA in points in the paint per game. Harrow ranks 32nd. Boston is good at defending against fast break points. They rank fourth best in the NBA. And then Boston, we talked about this yesterday or a couple days ago, right? Their 3-point defense has been lacking a little bit. They rank 25th in 3-point field goals allowed per game. Norman Powell is that leader there for Miami. He ranks 21st best in the NBA in 3-point field goals made per game. So I think, generally speaking, he could benefit from that, but I'm not looking at how Boston defends against a specific position, right? I'll leave that to you guys, where you could use whatever tool that you feel comfortable with those NBA defense versus positions. I do think those tools are valuable. Okay. Boston, that they're above average in allowing assists per game and rebounds per game to opposing teams. And then Jaylen Brown has had a triple-double in 0 of his last 25 games against Miami. Moving on to the Knicks at Detroit matchup here. Knicks on an 8-game winning streak. They are scorching hot right now at Detroit, who's on a 1-game losing streak. They just lost last night to the Wizards, I believe it was, right? Anyways, Detroit has won the last 4 regular season games against the Knicks. But before that, the Knicks had won 16 regular season games in a row against Detroit. However, Detroit does lead the season series 1-0 against the Knicks this season. That game was at Detroit, like it is here tonight. And Detroit rolled them. There was a final score of 121-90 on January 5th. The Knicks are 5-4 on the money line on Fridays. Detroit 6-3 on the money line on Fridays. I really don't see any head-to-head player matchup records that stand out, but I'll just go ahead and say Brunson has a 9-6 career record against Cunningham. Brunson's 20-14 against Tobias Harris, and then Tobias Harris has a 16-8 career record against Cat. I found one player head-to-head matchup that I'll talk about here in a bit that sounded pretty interesting. There's also another trend that I found that was pretty interesting when I was doing my research this morning. We'll get into that. But against the spread trends, I looked at several different things. The against the spread, road favorite versus home underdog, after a win versus after a loss, and then rest advantage versus rest disadvantage. Overall, I give the Knicks a 3-1 advantage on all in those against the spread trends. The Knicks are better in general against the spread than Detroit is. The Knicks are 29-23 against the spread, which ranks 7th best in the NBA. Detroit is 25-25 against the spread this season. Here's where I'll give Detroit a against the spread advantage is where as a home underdog, they're 3-1 against the spread, which ranks 4th best in the NBA. Not a large sample size, right? But it is what it is there. But the Knicks are 5-11 against the spread as a road favorite, which ranks 7th worst in the NBA. And then the Knicks have the best against the spread record after a win. They won, like I mentioned, they're on an 8-game winning streak. They're 21-12 against the spread after a win. But Detroit's solid too after a loss. They're 8-4 against the spread after a loss, which ranks 5th best in the NBA. And then the Knicks, they're 6-5 against the spread when they have rest advantage, and Detroit 7-8 against the spread with rest disadvantage. Overall, these teams are above average in regards to team defensive efficiency. Once again, don't let that word confuse you. Basically, it's just judging how good or bad a defense is. They're both above average defenses in that defensive efficiency mark. And Detroit actually ranks 2nd best in the NBA. The Knicks rank 13th in that category. So, both of these teams really defend against everything pretty well here. Points in the paint, they're a couple of the top teams, really. Detroit ranks 3rd best in points in the paint allowed per game. The Knicks rank 4th. above average fast breaks, assists, all that stuff. The biggest flaw that I see really for the Knicks are going to be two things. The biggest flaw is going to be the 3-point field goals allowed per game to opposing teams. They rank 22nd in that category. And Duncan Robinson, the projected starting shooting guard for Detroit, is the leader of the Detroit Pistons in 3-point field goals made per game. He ranks 16th best in the NBA. Another flaw that I see here with the Knicks, is opponent free throws allowed per game. They rank 19th in that category, so not terrible, right? Just a little bit below league average. But if you do like Cade Cunningham or Duran, who I believe is questionable, right? We said Duran was questionable. Well, he was shut down early yesterday, right? He left the game early against the Wizards yesterday. So I would, keep an eye out for him. Tobias Harris missed yesterday. Cade Cunningham was questionable until about 30 minutes until tip off. So I would keep an eye out for those guys if you're interested in this game. But, anyways, yeah, Cade Cunningham ranks 11th best in free throw attempts per game. Jalen Duren ranks 27th best in the NBA in free throw attempts per game. So I think those guys could benefit from that flaw there if they play. And then, with Detroit, I mean, like I mentioned, they're the second best team in regards to team defensive efficiency. So I don't see like any huge vulnerabilities with them. I'm looking at their rankings and how they rank against other teams in the NBA, and really their biggest flaw when it comes to points in the paint allowed, fast break points allowed, 3-point field goals allowed, assists allowed, or rebounds allowed per game. Their biggest flaw is the 3-point field goals allowed per game, but they rank 8th best in that category. But the Pistons, it's crazy because they allow the most free throw attempts per game to opposing teams. So if you guys do like Towns or Brunson on the points tonight, I do give them an extra benefit here since they are the leaders for the Knicks in free throw attempts per game. Towns ranks 15th best in the NBA in that category. Brunson ranks 22nd. Cade Cunningham has had a triple-double in 1 out of 10 career games against the Knicks, and then Josh Hart has had a triple-double in 1 out of 14 career games against Detroit. Something, if you are interested in triple-double props, I mean, I think something else that's valuable to look at is like player head-to-head history, especially if they're going up against somebody who hasn't been with that team for a while. For instance, like Bam Adebayo tonight going up against Vucevic. For all I know, I didn't look it up, but for all I know, let's say Bam has played 20 career games against Boston and has never had a triple-double. But then you go look at Bam versus Vucevic, and Bam has a triple-double in 8 out of 10 career games against Vucevic or something like that, So I do think that could be valuable. But, anyways, let's move on to this next game here. Yo, what's up? What's up, Chase? We have Indiana at Milwaukee. Indiana's on a 2-game losing streak. Milwaukee, 2-game win streak. Both of these teams did not play yesterday. Milwaukee has won 3 regular season games in a row against Indiana. Milwaukee leads the season series 2-0 against Indiana. They won at Indiana. This game's in Milwaukee tonight, but they won at Indiana on November 3rd by a final score of 117-115. They also won at Indiana on 12/23 by a final score of 111-94. I mean, I would guess that they probably had Giannis playing in those games, and by the looks of it, Giannis isn't going to play again today. I would double check on that leading up to game time, but Indiana is 4-5 on the money line on Fridays this season. Milwaukee's 5-4 on the money line on Fridays this season. And hey, you could say if you want to classify this as a revenge game for Miles Turner, he left the Pacers in free agency in the year 2025. So, he may be playing with an extra chip on his shoulder tonight. And then Pascal Siakam, the projected power forward for Indiana today has a 17-6 career record against Kyle Kuzma, who's the projected starting small forward for Milwaukee. When I checked this morning, I don't know if I mentioned the line in the Knicks game, but when I checked this morning, that line was Knicks minus 1.5, over under 223.5. And that's what I'm seeing here now. Knicks minus 1.5, over under 222.5. So that total's dropped a point. But this Indiana game, Indiana minus 1.5 is what I saw when I looked a few hours ago. Minus 1.5, over under 224.5. I'm still seeing the same spread, but that total has also dropped 1 point. It's at 223.5 now. But against the spread trends, I looked at three different trends for this game, and Indiana leads those trends 2-1. Overall, Indiana's better against the spread than Milwaukee. Indiana's 26-25 against the spread. Milwaukee is 21-28 against the spread, which ranks fifth worst in the NBA. Indiana hasn't been a road favorite except one time this year, and they lost in that game. So they have the worst record technically in the NBA against the spread as a road favorite. The Bucks are 6-6 against the spread as a home underdog, which ranks 10th worst. But Milwaukee advantage there. And then Indiana is 17-20 against the spread after a loss, which ranks 7th worst. But still, they win this trend as well. Milwaukee is 6-13 against the spread after a win, which ranks second worst in the NBA. So, overall, I give Indiana the 2-1 advantage there in regards to those against the spread trends. This would be a good game for Giannis to come back because, I don't think it's going to happen, but Indiana does allow the second most points in the paint per game to opposing teams, and Giannis is the best points in the paint scorer in the NBA in regards to points in the paint per game. But if you can find somebody for Milwaukee that can, score some points in the paint instead of him, I think you could be at an advantage there. And then, Milwaukee's three-point defense is terrible. They rank 27th in three-point field goals allowed per game. I don't see anybody for Indiana on that top 50 list of three-point field goals made per game. But if you like a three-point shooter for Indiana today, I do give an advantage for you there, a general advantage there. I do just want to mention Indiana has allowed the fewest three-point field goals allowed to opposing teams this season. So that seems to be a strong quality of theirs. Milwaukee, slightly below average in defending against assists per game. Nembhard ranks fifth best in the NBA in assists per game for Indiana, and then TJ McConnell ranks 42nd. Nembhard also ranks 10th in potential assists per game, which, potential assists basically measures the process of getting a scoring opportunity rather than the outcome of the shot. It's a little bit more advanced, but I do want to just mention that. Okay, rebounds allowed per game. Both of these teams are below average. In fact, Indiana's terrible. They allow the second most rebounds per game to opposing teams. So if you like somebody from Milwaukee on the boards today, you have that working in your favor. Bobby Portis ranks 42nd in the NBA, 42nd best in the NBA in rebounds per game. I do think that we mentioned that he's questionable to play in this game tonight due to a hip issue. Yes. But if he does play, I think he could have an advantage there. It depends on some other factors, right? How Indiana is against his position. What is his history look like against Siakam? Is he rebounding better this year? What about if Giannis is, in versus when Giannis is out? There's all types of stuff to look at, But, so Milwaukee, is also below average in rebounds allowed per game. They rank 23rd in that category. Zubac, I don't believe he's playing tonight, right, for Indiana. I think I mentioned he's out. Yeah, they're saying here on RotoWire that he's not going to play tonight, so I won't mention that. But Siakam ranks 41st best in the NBA in rebounds per game. Both of these teams overall have bad defensive efficiency rate rankings. Indiana ranks 21st, Milwaukee ranks 23rd. If you can find somebody for Milwaukee that is good at getting to the free throw line a little bit, and you like them on the points tonight, I'll give you an extra advantage here since Indiana sends their opponents to the line more the second most times per game than any other team in the league. But Milwaukee's not too far behind them. They rank 23rd in opponent free throws attempts per game. Siakam ranks 21st in that category. Nembhard ranks 38th. Those are the leaders for Indiana in that category. And then we have the Pelicans at Minnesota Timberwolves. All right. So the Pelicans are on a 3-game losing streak. Minnesota, 1-game winning streak. Both of these teams did not play yesterday. Minnesota has won 3 regular season games in a row against the Pelicans, and the last 4 out of 5 regular season meetings against the Pelicans. Minnesota also leads the season series 2-0. So they've played twice against each other this season. Minnesota's won both of those times. One was on December 2nd at New Orleans. This game is at Minnesota tonight. On December 2nd, that game was at New Orleans, and Minnesota won by a final score of 149-142 in overtime. Very high scoring game. And then Minnesota also won at New Orleans again a couple of days later by a final score of 125-116. The Pelicans have a 3-7 money line record on Fridays this season, and Minnesota's 4-3 on the money line on Fridays this season. It is, let's see, if you like Zion Williamson tonight, what I will say is that the most points that he has ever scored in a game was against Minnesota. He scored 43 points in that game. And if you want to check out that box score, it was on December 28th, 2022. But the Pelicans have won in 5 straight games in which they've played on February 6th against any team that they've played. So they're on a 5-game February 6th winning streak. And then the biggest head-to-head matchup record that I saw, the biggest lopsided one was Julius Randle has a 4-0 career record against Trey Murphy. And then, Julius Randle plays with Minnesota. In case you didn't know, Julius Randle, 4-0 career record against Trey Murphy, who plays with the Pelicans. And then Anthony Edwards for Minnesota has a 6-2 career record against Trey Murphy as well. When I checked this morning, the line was at Minnesota minus 10.5 on DK. I'm seeing it at minus 9.5 now, over under 236.5. I looked at 3 different against the spread trends on this game, and the Pelicans lead all of those trends. The Pelicans have the 10th best record in the NBA against the spread. Minnesota has the 8th worst record in the NBA against the spread. And then I looked, the Pelicans technically have a slightly higher winning percentage as a road underdog against the spread than Minnesota does as a home favorite. And then the Pelicans have a better against the spread record after a loss than Minnesota does after a win. The Pelicans are 20-18-1 against the spread after a loss. Minnesota is 13-18 against the spread after a win, which ranks 10th worst in the NBA. Also, the first 15,000 fans who show up to this game receive a classic edition scarf presented by U.S. Bank. Let's talk about this Minnesota defense a little bit. Minnesota ranks 16th, so about average in points in the paint allowed per game. I mentioned Zion scored his career high in points against Minnesota back in 2022. Uh, I think, generally speaking, he could take advantage of that tonight. Considering he ranks second in points in the paint per game this season in the entire NBA, he ranks second in that category. Minnesota ranks 10th in fast break points allowed per game, seventh in 3-point field goals allowed per game. Another flaw that they have here, instead of just the points in the paint allowed, is rebounds allowed per game. They rank 16th in the NBA. Not a huge flaw, right? I mean, overall, this Minnesota team is good defensively. They rank sixth in team defensive efficiency. But those would be the flaws that I see with them, is the points in the paint allowed and those rebounds allowed per game, which, by the way, Derek Queen is the leader for this team in rebounds per game. He ranks 31st and best in the NBA. And sometimes, guys, you may hear me say, for instance, I don't know, here's just an example, right? And it's probably not a great example, but let's say Valanciunas has played, with the Nuggets the entire season. He's played every single game, but Jokic has missed like half of his games, which, from my understanding, he pretty much has. They won't have Jokic in the official statistics. So I may say that Valanciunas leads the team in rebounds per game, but really it's Jokic, but they just don't classify his statistics as official. I think it depends on how many games he's missed. So do just want to clarify that, okay? So if you know anybody that's missed a lot of time, in the NBA this season, maybe they're just not on that official statistic list. Okay, so those are the flaws I see with Minnesota's defense. New Orleans, they're bad in defensive efficiency. They rank 27th in that category. Points in the paint allowed per game, they rank 24th. So not too many teams allow more points in the paint per game than New Orleans. Julius Randle ranks 25th best in the NBA, who's technically questionable to play tonight due to that thumb soreness. But, I do want to mention that in case he does play. And then Anthony Edwards ranks 30th best in the NBA, second best on the team in points in the paint per game. New Orleans fast break points allowed per game, they rank 25th. So not many teams allow more fast break points per game than New Orleans. Anthony Edwards ranks 8th best in the NBA in that category. And then Dosunmu, who is now a Minnesota Timberwolf, he's questionable to play tonight, but if he does play, he does rank second best on this team now in fast break points per game, 19th best in the NBA. Excuse me. 3-point field goals allowed per game. New Orleans allows the second most 3-point field goals per game to opposing teams. Anthony Edwards ranks 7th best in the NBA. DiVincenzo ranks 10th. Naz Reid ranks 33rd. So I think those guys could take advantage of that lack of 3-point defense by New Orleans tonight. Also, assists allowed per game. New Orleans allows the second most assists per game to opposing teams. Julius Randle ranks 30th in assists per game this season for Minnesota, and then followed up with by DiVincenzo, who ranks 50th in that category. And then rebounds allowed per game. New Orleans ranks 27th in that category. So Gobert is the leader for the Timberwolves. He ranks second best in the NBA in rebounds per game. Then it's Julius Randle, who ranks 39th, and then Naz Reid, who ranks 50th. Also, I didn't see this when I was looking at Minnesota's flaws, but they do rank 24th in opponent free throw attempts per game. So if you like, Sadiq Bey or Trey Murphy tonight on the points, I do give them, generally speaking, and a better advantage considering they're in the top 50 of the NBA in free throw attempts per game. And then also for the triple-double guys out there, Julius Randle has not had a triple-double in 21 career games against Minnesota, or against New Orleans, sorry. Against New Orleans, I think we have 2 games left to cover. So I got a couple cool trends that you guys might like here on these next 2 games. All right, so Memphis, especially on the last game. Memphis at Portland. I'm not saying that trends are everything, right? But you know, sometimes it's good to go against those trends. Sometimes it's good to go with them. I'll let you guys be the decider of that. But yeah, Minnesota, 2-game win streak at Portland, 6-game losing streak. Neither of these teams played yesterday. Memphis has won one regular season game in a row against Portland. Memphis leads the season series 1-0 against Portland. So that was earlier this season on December 7th. Memphis won by a final score of 119-96. This game is being played in Portland tonight, so that game was in Memphis. Memphis is 4-7 on the money lines on Friday this season. Portland's 5-5 on the money line on Fridays this season. But Memphis, guys, they have lost on February 6th in 10 straight games that they've played any team on February 6th, which I thought was pretty fascinating. When I checked the spread this morning, Portland was favored by 6.5 points, over under 232.5. And I'm still seeing that here. When I'm looking at these against the spread trends, I see that Portland leads every trend 3-0 against the spread advantage here. So, they're better against the spread, just generally speaking. Memphis is actually the fourth worst team against the spread this season. Memphis is fifth worst against the spread as a road underdog. Portland's 500. They're 4-4 against the spread as a home favorite. And then, Memphis also ranks fourth worst against the spread in the NBA after a win. Portland is 14-13 against the spread after a loss. So let's talk about Portland's defense real quick. They're below average in allowing points in the paint per game, fast break points per game, assists per game, and rebounds per game. But if Edie and Morant are still unavailable here for Memphis tonight, which it seems like they are, those are the points in the paint leaders for Memphis. So, if you like somebody from Memphis tonight, you know that they're good at scoring points in the paint. I do give them, generally speaking, a slight advantage considering Portland is slightly below average and allowing other teams to score points in the paint against them. Fast break points allowed per game, Portland allows the fourth most. I have here on my list, Ty Jerome ranks 30th and Morant ranks 48th there for Memphis. Portland assists allowed per game, they rank 19th, so slightly below average. And assists allowed per game to opposing teams, Cam Spencer ranks 25th in the NBA in assists per game. So those would really be the flaws that I see with Memphis here, and players that, generally speaking, can take advantage of that. I mean, I think on these breakdowns, I think I've been doing these since Sunday. All the players that I've been listing, I mean, it doesn't seem like too many of them are just, underperforming. I obviously list a lot of players throughout these shows. Not every player for every team, but like 2 or 3 players. Man, it seems like everybody's been doing pretty good. So, anyways, I don't know an exact number on that, but just seems that way. Anyways, let's talk about Memphis here. They're above average in points in the paint allowed per game, fast break points per game. But 3-point field goals allowed per game, Memphis ranks 26. So Memphis has a weak 3-point defense. Guys that I see that could take advantage of that. Kamara, who ranks 35th best in the NBA in 3-point field goals made per game. And then Avia, who ranks 43rd. And then Kredge, who ranks 50th. And then, assists allowed per game. Memphis ranks 16th in that category, so slightly below average. Avia, he's questionable tonight, but if he does play, I think he could take advantage of that, considering he ranks 12th best in the NBA in assists per game. Also, Avia ranks 8th in the NBA, 8th best in potential assists per game. And then you got Memphis, who allows they rank 18th in rebounds allowed per game. Okay. Klingon, the projected starting center there for Portland, ranks third best in the NBA in rebounds per game. And then Avia ranks 34th. But once again, guys, I'm not looking at like head to head matchups, Klingon versus a specific player for Memphis, or how Memphis defends against that specific position. I'm just, giving you that general information, trying to give you guys a solid foundation to work with here today. And then, overall, I don't know if I mentioned it, team defensive efficiency. Both of these teams are slightly below average in team defensive efficiency. Memphis ranks 16th, Portland ranks 19th. And then Portland also sends their opponents to the free throw line more times than average. League average. I didn't see anybody in the top 50 for Memphis that could take advantage of that. But if you know a guy from Memphis that you like for the points tonight, and they're good at drawing some fouls here and there, I think they could get to the line against Portland, who ranks 24th in opponent free throw attempts per game. Avia has he has had a triple double in 0 out of 12 career games against Memphis. Last game we have is the Clippers and the Sacramento Kings, which is the most interesting trend that I found here today. And it's not the fact that the Kings are on a 10-game losing streak, even though that is pretty interesting there. The Clippers are on a 2-game losing streak. The Kings are on a 10-game losing streak. Neither of these teams played yesterday. The Clippers have won 5 regular season games in a row against Sacramento. The Clippers lead the season series 1-0 against Sacramento. They won. That game was in Los Angeles. This one's going to be in Sacramento. But Los Angeles Clippers won that game on December 30th by a final score of 131-90. And then the Clippers are 6-3 on the money line on Fridays this season, and then Sacramento's 2-7 on the money line on Fridays this season. And here we go, the moment you've all been waiting for. Kawhi Leonard has a 15-0 career record against Zach LaVine. So in games that these guys have played against each other, Kawhi Leonard, a perfect 15-0 against Zach LaVine. Kawhi Leonard also has an 18-5 career record against DeRozan and a 27-23 career record against Russell Westbrook. When I checked this morning, that line was Clippers -3.5, over under 222.5 on DK. I'm still seeing that number there. The Clippers, I'm looking at 3 different spread trends. The Clippers win all of those trends. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I will say that Sacramento is the worst team in the NBA against the spread, and they're the worst team against the spread after a loss in the NBA. Points in the paint allowed per game, Sacramento is bad at that. They allow the third most. So I think Kawhi Leonard could take advantage of that tonight. Just depends on some other factors, but he does rank 34th best in the NBA in points in the paint per game. Sacramento is above average at fast break points allowed per game, 3-point field goals allowed per game. If you like anybody for the Clippers tonight for assists or rebounds, Sacramento ranks in the low 20s in both of those categories. So I just didn't find anybody for the Clippers that ranks in the top 50 of the NBA in those categories per game. But then Sacramento they allow the 5th most free throws per game to their opponents. So Kawhi Leonard, he ranks 19th best in the NBA in free throw attempts per game. And then we'll talk about the Clippers defense. Both of these teams, I just want to mention real quick, they're below average in team defensive efficiency. Sacramento ranks 28th. The Clippers rank 20th. But, the Clippers looks like really the fast break points they've had trouble with, but they rank 20th in that category. So LaVine, Keegan Murray, who I believe is out, right? Keegan Murray, but LaVine, I feel like could take advantage of that here tonight, possibly. Considering he ranks 18th best in the NBA in fast break points per game. Also, I think LaVine could take advantage of, possibly the Clippers' 3 points defense. They rank 19th in 3-point field goals allowed per game. LaVine ranks 28th best in the NBA in 3-point field goals made per game. And then just for the triple doubles here, Sabonis has had a triple double in 1 out of 22 career games against the Clippers. Westbrook has had a triple double in 0 of his last 25 games against the Clippers. And then Kawhi Leonard has had a triple-double in 0 of his last 25 games against the Kings. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys for tuning in today. Hopefully this information was helpful. If you guys, feel like you want another piece of information that seems, um, you know, if you want me to mention something else on here, um, some information that maybe you don't like have the time to do research for, feel free to shoot me a message or not move podcast a message. The best way to get a hold of me is just messaging me on, one of many different platforms. I have, social media accounts on a bunch of different platforms, Bettors. But I think that about does it. I'll still, I'll continue to think of some stuff that could help you guys out, to add to the show. But it if you're like if you're confused on how to go about it from here, I do have previous shows where I've dove even deeper into this stuff. I would spend 30 minutes looking at a particular player. So but I'm, decided to start doing these shows a little bit more general now. So, anyways, thank you guys for showing up, and hope you guys have a great Friday. And thank you to the sponsors: BetUS, MyBookie.ag, Walmart.com, Open Goal, the MLB and NFL Pro Shops, and W Energy Drinks. All right, everybody, take care. Good luck today. Peace.
This non-casual podcast may not be reproduced, retransmitted, or reused without the authorized written consent of the Not Move Podcast Network. Thank you, and we hope you enjoyed today's broadcast.